the level of success of an alternative model is really determined by whether the person who is training to deliver that model is trained in a way that uses it.
Biff, really appreciate you getting up at the wee hours of the morning to be with us, and we're really honoured to have you. You've done so much for the Montessori world, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but and always with such a imagination and a great sense of humour. But probably one of your most memorable feats was to officiate at a Montessori wedding at
Yes, the highlight of my Montessori career.
Yeah. Well, let's backtrack a bit, and maybe you can. I'll share some slides, and you can talk about how you got involved with CMT and what CNR is.
Okay.
Here.
That's cool. Well, when I got back from Italy, I knew Ginny Varga, who was one of the really early infant toddler people, and just instrumental in the infant toddler movement in the United States. And she came to visit Cincinnati, where I was teaching, and she introduced me to Carol Korngold at a celebration for Hilda Rothschild, who had studied with Montessori in France and who had come to the United States and started a school at a really large independent school in Cincinnati, and then moved to start both a lab school and also a training program at Xavier University. So that's a long, convoluted sentence. Anyway, I met Carol at that event, and she invited me to come here to the College of New Rochelle for to work with the training program. And we came down there. We moved into the College of New Rochelle every summer, like a circus. I mean, we rolled in there in trucks, and we had entire schools in plastic bins and cardboard boxes. And over the course of a long weekend, we would set up these environments for infants and toddlers, 3 to 6 year olds, 6 to 9 year olds, 9 to 12 year olds. And then we ultimately had a program for training administrators. And so all of those things went on this campus every summer. So it was really quite an event. And that's actually the building you guys were married in, right?
Yeah. And don't forget all the fans too.
Oh, it was very hot. If you had an air-conditioned room, you were really lucky, because the classrooms were not air-conditioned. The dorms were I think designed as sweat lodges. And but everybody moved in, so we had entire cohorts, pretty large cohorts generally, that came to this college in the summer and were living there. A few people lived off campus, but most people, because it was an international program, most people were living on campus. And people would come. They'd come and practice at all hours of the day and all hours of the night. Actually, we had a meeting yesterday of our training program, and we were talking about how the advantage of a residential program if you could pull it off. I don't know whether you can even pull it off anymore, but if you can pull off a residential program, the advantage really is that spontaneous hours and hours of working together with other people, just in the lab, in the environment, practicing and talking. Commuter
That's a
programs
beautiful
have a
setting.
hard time. What?
It was a beautiful setting. Those buildings, stone buildings.
Yeah.
That was one. And inside this building, there's the elementary environment, which was all set up. The front here, there's a horseshoe of tables, right, where the presentations would happen, and then behind is all the shelves, which are made of like cardboard cylinders with wooden boards on rested on top of them. All very
you can actually see that if you look really closely at the shelves on the left-hand side there. You can see that the boards are supported by those cardboard cylinders, and so not the most stunningly attractive raw materials, but it actually was a pretty attractive environment when it was all set up.
So this was a ballroom, right?
Yeah, it was the ballroom. It was a dormitory, so I don't know an awful lot about the history of the college, but I can sort of imagine what went on in here. Then there was a big lounge. If you look through the doorway that's in the back there, there's the lounge. You walk through
that's the lounge.
Yeah. And we would meet in there for community meetings and weddings and things like that. Yeah.
So there you are on the left.
Yeah.
26 years ago, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
26.
And so you wrote this wedding. You and I can't remember who you probably wrote it. This wedding ceremony where we used the Montessori curriculum as the ceremony, right? So if you look on the floor there, you can see two white lines, which are paper towel rolls that have been unrolled, and we used the convergent, divergent, parallel lines lesson. And so Olga and I walked in with these face what are they, face photos of indifferent and happy and sad, and kind of switched those. And well, we didn't use the sad one, right? We just had convergent and then parallel, or parallel first and then convergent, and we converged in front of the judge there, who's in the black robe. She was a New York judge, right?
Yeah.
And she was
a friend of the director of the program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were the MC. And then there were a lot of kids who were in my class at that time who went to the school where I was working, where you were the 9 to 12 teacher at that time, forever. Yeah. How long have you been? You're still there, right?
Yeah.
How long have you been there?
Well, I got there in 1986.
Wow.
So, yeah, I've been, and there's a big mural on the front of one of the buildings now, that because a couple of years ago when AMS gave me the Living Legacy Award, I was surprised by the art teacher who had organized all the kids and created this mural that has little cartoon pictures of me, sort of like Where's Waldo. They have a picture of the campus, a drawing of the campus with me peering out of the greenhouse, and it was pretty adorable. Yeah.
Well, Olga and I still have very fond memories. We both worked at Lexington Montessori for me for 8 years, Olga for 4 years, and it was a special time. Still remember those children by name. So there's Olga entering with her indifferent face, and children read. There's Megan Parker Gray. She read a poem or something, and then we had a cake made by the cafeteria. And some of the kids, there's Gregor
and Megan in the back.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sarah
wow.
These children are all in their mid-30s by now.
Yeah.
Mm.
God, I haven't seen these are great pictures. Sarah Netzel.
Yeah.
There's us a bit later when after
I think that was for our 10th wedding anniversary. We went to New York. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us about the Living Legacy Award. You were a Living Legacy in 2021. What is that?
Yeah, I don't. The years are a little confusing because they announce it, and then after they announce it, you serve for a year, and by that at the end of that year, people have sort of gotten the message that that's going on. So then after that, there's more activity, and then they announce somebody else, and so I can't remember what year it actually was, 21 or 20.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you don't have to die to get the award.
No, you don't. That is good. The alternative would have been an unfortunate one.
What's the purpose of the award, and what did you have to do?
Well, I got it in the middle of a pandemic, so it was pretty different for me from normal. But I think the purpose of the award is to recognize people who have sworn a vow of poverty and decided to be Montessori teachers all their lives, and also to raise funds for scholarships. So whatever, every year the American Montessori Society asks people to donate money in the name of the Living Legacy, and all of that money is used to award scholarships by the American Montessori Society. So that's I think why it was originally initiated. And so in normal years, that involves traveling some, getting invited to go to different schools or wherever, communities where somebody organizes an event, charges money, people come to hear you speak, and then the proceeds go to the American Montessori Society. And of course, nobody was traveling and nobody could do that kind of stuff. So what I did is I recorded a couple of different things, and people could sign up to do a variety of things. They could have if you paid a little extra, I would actually introduce the talk live on Zoom. And then they would watch the recorded talk, and then I would come back live on Zoom for a question and answer period. And if you paid a little less, all you got was the recorded talk, and I could sleep or do whatever. I have no idea how many of those things actually happened. I know there were a few people that paid a little extra, so I went to the introduction and the Q&A, and those were fun. It was kind of like this. It was interesting to get an idea of what people were thinking about in different parts of the country, and so that I was talking with parent communities and school communities. That's what I did. one of the talks, I'm just remembering this now, one of the talks was really directed at parents, and the other of the talks was really directed at teachers, so that if a school wanted to use it for a faculty event, they could do one of them, and if they wanted to use it as a parent event or a whole school event, they could use the other one.
Mm.
The idea.
So as you mentioned earlier, you went to Bergamo to train back, if I remember correctly, like the early 70s or so.
Yeah.
But you've worked for your Montessori career with the American Montessori Society.
Right.
Can you talk a bit about that shift and what the, why you work with AMS and what the difference, a bit about the politics, because
Sure.
AMS is not that well known here.
Sure. Well, I got started in Cincinnati, as I said. Well, I didn't say that's, but I was living in North Carolina at the time. I had gone to school in North Carolina, and I went to Cincinnati to visit my sister, who was a Montessori teacher. She's now retired. She worked for years with toddlers, and I had visited her family in the Virgin Islands, where they lived for a while, and that's actually where I first saw Montessori schools. Went to the Virgin Islands Montessori School and saw the elementary kids there. And I went to another school on the island, which was a really small early childhood program where their younger child was. And in both cases, I was just taken by I guess primarily by the freedom of the kids and the respect that they were receiving. And I mean, it's pretty idyllic to watch kids roll out timelines in the outside on the, across a courtyard. And I mean, I just was taken. So anyway, I went back to North Carolina, and then I went to visit my sister when she had gone to Cincinnati. And when I visited the lab school at Xavier University, the school that Hilda Rothschild had started, and I also visited a school that was in a historic mansion called the New School, and I just loved the way both schools looked, and I just made the decision fairly quickly to move to Cincinnati and to enroll at Xavier University to get my master's. And I did that, but I worked with Hilda Rothschild was there still, and Martha McDermott, who had gone to Bergamo, and they were both magical. I mean, it was just, I loved the coursework. I loved the work that I was doing with kids. But at some point I started working at the New School, the school that was in the mansion. I started working with the 9 to 12-year-olds. And I just hadn't gotten enough from Xavier, because Xavier was really technically not training you to work with 9 to 12-year-olds. It was really a lower elementary program. And so I started going around to lots of different schools and observing. And I found that the only really well-developed 9 to 12 classrooms were run by people who had done AMI training, which just makes sense because there just wasn't any 9 to 12 training in the United States at that point. So I went to, at one point I went to Cleveland, and I stayed with David Kahn, and I was furiously copying everything in his classroom to take back to Cincinnati. And he said, I'm impressed with your zeal, but this is really pretty stupid. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, why don't you go to Italy and get trained, so you don't have to do this? And I said, because I can't afford it. And he said, well, you don't pay for that. You get your school to pay for that. And I said, yeah, but you don't know my school. My school's really poor. There's no way they could send me. And he said, then move to Cleveland and I'll send you. And I said, I can't do that because I have a girlfriend. And so then he coached me in how to raise the funds. He said, get the school to figure out ways of raising the funds to send you. So with that inspiration, I went back to Cincinnati and wrote grants and got grants to go to Italy. So that's not really the answer to your question, but it's fun to look back at. So when I came back from Italy, I was, I started working with 9 to 12-year-olds, and I felt pretty well prepared. But the difference in the experience between the 6 to 9 training that I had done with Martha McDermott at Xavier and the 6 to 12 training that I had done in Italy the difference was really stark. On the one hand, it was just a Shangri-La in Bergamo, because we had an entire year to, drink wine and illustrate albums and make materials and hang out with each other. And people were there from all over the world. And it was a beautiful, beautiful city. And so that was wonderful. But the part that was troubling to me was that we really never got to know the people who were doing the training. There was a very clear separation between trainers and trainees, and it was kind of hierarchical, and it was frankly a little bit harsh. And people were afraid to ask questions, and I just thought, this is not the way Montessorians should be trained. It's not the way we are with children. It's not the way we should be with each other. And that was not my experience with at Xavier, where I felt like Martha McDermott was on a voyage with me, and she was a co-learner with a lot more experience, but she was available, accessible, and curious. And so I think that was the first really big difference. And then the other thing was that when Carol Korngold invited me to participate at the College of New Rochelle, that community also was so inclusive and so vibrant. It was all about creating things together and all about empowering new teachers, and less about I know stuff and you don't, and shut up and listen, And so I just got involved through the College of New Rochelle and through Carol Korngold, really, who was the director of the program. I got involved then with the American Montessori Society, and I served on the board of trustees. And I just never really looked back. I mean, I have, when I see David Kahn, I always have fond feelings, because I go back to his early inspiration. And he always expresses some disappointment that I didn't, remain with the orthodoxy. And I don't regret that at all. I mean, I really think that it's been, AMS has been, I think for both good, there are really good things. The fact that it's so open to ideas and development has been a really wonderful thing. And I think, it's grown really big, and people have done all sorts of things in the name of Montessori, that some of which they also say that it's in the name of the American Montessori Society, and probably some of us are a little embarrassed that they claim that. But I put the responsibility on the user to a certain extent. I think you just have to do your research and find out what's authentic and what isn't. And there are great people that are AMS people, and there are great people that are AMI people. It really, you know, depends on what where you want to go with it and what you do with it. So
Do you think that essence that you talked about, that the democratization, the inclusivity on the AMS side is still a real difference between those two big schools, or is it starting to change?
well, I think AMI is starting to change. I think the inclusivity is still true of the American Montessori Society. The AMI in the United States, anyway, went through a really difficult period a few years ago because they're at a conference. The organization was pretty viciously attacked by people accusing them of being non-inclusive, and particularly non-inclusive of people of color. And the organization has worked really hard to change that now. And I think that's having an impact on a variety of different areas of AMI. But I have to say I don't follow that closely because I've never really been involved in AMI politics, or I haven't gone to refresher courses or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm not really very well versed in what goes on in the AMI community.
Well, AMS is a huge organization in comparison in the US. What have been your roles with the AMS over the years?
Well, when I served on the board, I started a thing called the Touring Symposium. I don't know whether you remember that, but it traveled around the United States and tried to identify one challenge or one issue that we were all dealing with, and get some people to headline that, and then try to foster a communication around that issue. So that was one thing I spent a lot of time on. And then there were other professional development things that I was responsible for, because I was doing mostly professional development for teachers. But I also I was also working on the accreditation commission, because we were creating the process of accrediting schools, and then just board stuff. But since then I was on a search committee for a national director. Most recently, I've been working with an organization called Instructor Academy, which has the purpose of helping experienced teachers who want to start becoming trainers see the difference between working with adult learners from working with children. So we're studying andragogy and how to go about preparing yourself to be a teacher trainer. That's been a pretty interesting professional development process for me. And then I also have been a mentor for what's called the ELF program with AMS, the Emerging Leaders program, also for experienced teachers, but people who are interested in just becoming leadership players in the organization, and whether they are going into administration or whether they are just developing themselves as classroom leaders. It's a cohort that gets together and does a bunch of work together in order to develop their leadership skills. And that also has been really interesting. And in a couple of weeks, I'm on an accreditation team for a school, so I do that kind of stuff, and then that and presenting at conferences and seminars and things.
What's the size of AMS now? What's, like, for example, a typical conference? How many people would show up?
Oh, Well, the conference is in Boston in March, this coming March, and I'm guessing there will be something in the neighborhood of 5,000 people.
Mm.
That's about what it's been the last, I mean, yeah, last year they, for the first time, really allowed people to either attend the conference virtually or live. And we were still emerging from the pandemic. So I think there were probably a little over 2,000 people there live.
Mhm.
And there were another probably 3,000 that were there virtually. But I think we're expecting 5,000 people to come to Boston.
So what you were describing a minute ago, it sounds like it's a kind of an AMS version of the Trainer of Trainers program, with
Yeah.
the AMI Trainer of Trainers. How is that different to the AMI Trainer of Trainers program? I've often felt that my sense is that the way that the AMI Trainer of Trainers program is set up has really restricted the size of or the growth of Montessori, because it really restricts the number of trainers available in the world to just a handful, more or less, a few handfuls now. But AMS seems quite different. There are a lot of AMS training programs, and they're variable in quality, but they're sort of come and go quickly, and seem very responsive. How would you?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think it's, in some ways, it's a microcosm of the difference between the two organizations. I mean, Nancy Rambush used to say that AMI is orthodox and AMS is reform. And the AMI, Nancy's fight with Mario that separated AMS from AMI really grew out of this issue. She wanted to train teachers. She said the United States needs teachers, and they need them quickly. And we can't wait for you and your one or two people to come over here and train all of these teachers. That's just not going to happen. And she said, so I want to start training people at Whitby School in Connecticut. And Mario said, only Mario and Mario's chosen can do training. If you want to do training and you know, we're not going to be there shortly, you'll have to come to Europe. And so Nancy said, then we're going to start our own organization. And she broke off from AMS and from AMI and started AMS. And I think that, you know, my impression, I've never really investigated the training of trainers process with AMI, but my impression has been that you essentially have to be an apprentice for some period of years. And really the only people that can do it are people who are independently wealthy, because you don't get paid and you are working full time trying to learn how to be a trainer. And then you at some point are anointed. And of course, that's a pretty limited number of people that can do that. And the process with AMS now, using the Instructor Academy, which is really brand new, but using that process, there's a pretty intensive look at a couple of things, you know, really trying to understand at a deeper level the psychology of children at the various ages. Also really trying to understand the psychology of adult learners. And then studying really the difference between empowering an adult to work with kids and empowering kids directly. And I think that for years, what we've really done is show people in a training program exactly what you do with children. And there's some wonderful things about that. You know, you practice and you really learn to be a Montessori teacher by being a Montessori teacher.
Mm.
And but I think there are some problems with it too, because we sometimes have not made explicit what a Montessori teacher is. We've really just tried to model it because we haven't developed the understanding of what a Montessori teacher is. And the Instructor Academy attempts to make that explicit. And that's been, at least for me as a learner, which is ironic because I was supposed to be an instructor, but as a learner, I've learned a whole lot about it. And so I don't know. I mean, my guess is that some of the training for trainers that AMI does is magical, because you are working really directly with highly experienced and highly skilled presenters, you know, and if you really have a close kind of intimate relationship with that person, and you're really paying attention, I would think you'd learn a whole lot. But you know, when I was in Bergamo, there was somebody doing that, and I just thought I thought it was a fairly demeaning kind of position. She became a trainer, but she was really a gopher most of the time, and I think that's a pretty different process than what we do. Also, you know, most of the people that work with METC, for example, the program I work in, most of the people that work with us have not gone through anything like the Instructor Academy, because it didn't exist. They have come to training and not only been really enthused about becoming Montessori teachers, but have also really loved the community of METC or CMTE and wanted to be a part of that community. And in fact, that's so true that when CMTE stopped training elementary teachers because Carol Korngold retired and we stopped going to those majestic buildings in New Rochelle, the faculty all got together and said, we don't want to stop working together. Let's reconstitute. And so we created a not-for-profit corporation, Montessori Elementary Teacher Training Collaborative, and moved the summer program to Lexington, Massachusetts. So all of those people that work together in New Rochelle now get together up here. So you know,
the core team has been working, you, the Duffys, the Robin, Bryman, and
Joel.
You've been working together for what, 30 years?
Yep. Forever. I think a couple of lifetimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, these are people that are, you know,
yeah, family.
They're my best friends in many ways. The people that I've been working, you know, and we get together every month on Zoom for meetings, and we work on projects all the time to improve the program, working in task forces and things throughout the year.
Well, that was certainly true for me when I trained with you at CMTE, was that the program felt like an adult version of what a Montessori classroom should feel like for children. So for my first, 5 years in the classroom, I always compared the feeling of my classroom to what it felt like to be at New Rochelle with the trainers. And that was my measure of, one of the measures of whether it was working properly.
That would work. That was exactly what our goal continues to be. I think, I remember a long time ago reading that people who have studied alternative education models say that the level of success of an alternative model is really determined by whether the person who is training to to deliver that model is trained in a way that uses it, because talk is cheap. And if you've experienced a certain way of learning, then you can do it with children. But if you've only intellectually learned about doing that, then you revert usually to the way you were taught.
Role modeling. How would you characterize Montessori in the United States right now? It's been 6 years since Olga and I left, but my sense from things that I've heard is that it's really going through a bit of a renaissance, and part of that's been driven by Montessori in the public sector, part of it by big chains like Higher Ground that have bought up schools and are mixing for profit with Montessori, and maybe also just a sort of a it's maybe beginning to reach like a what do you call it, where you get a certain amount together and it becomes
Critical mass.
Critical mass.
I don't know. I have no idea what the real causative factors are. I think another part of it is that I like to believe that the world has at least a portion of the world has finally gotten ready to hear the message. And I think that message is also well, the message I think is that Montessori was not inventing a program to get you ready for highly competitive colleges. Montessori was working in schools because that's where the children were. If the children were somewhere else, she wouldn't have been an educator. But she became an educator because she was trying to change the world. And she thought that the only way to make a peaceful world was to create a brand new type of human being. And that was best done in childhood in schools. And so she created a program which was at its root profoundly respectful of who children really are. And I just think that we are at the point now that more and more people are realizing that skills, academic skills in particular, skills are expendable compared to mental health. It really doesn't matter how skillful you are if you're psychologically a mess, and more people really are psychologically a mess. I mean, the world has been producing so much more anxiety. And so I think there are a lot of parents that are looking for a different experience for their children, and they want their kids to be balanced and healthy as well as being well prepared. And I think that in combination with the gradual loss of confidence in standardized testing as an approach to measure the success of education. I know an issue that has been near and dear to your heart, Mark, for a long time. I think that's also catching on. And so I think there's a cultural shift that is also helping the growth of the Montessori movement, because people are realizing, it's not just because it's been around for a long time doesn't make it just old-fashioned and quaint. It actually has some answers.
Anna, did you have a question?
No, I wanted to add something, if you don't mind.
Sure, please.
Thank you. I wanted to
Ukraine?
Yeah, I'm from Ukraine. I represent Ukrainian Montessori community, and we created NGO that called Montessori UA to support Ukrainian Montessori educators during these hard times. And I wanted to thank Biff for this message, because that's really what I feel. And like we see right now that the world is so turbulent right now, so many changes are happening, and I think people see that old models are not working anymore, like old institutions that people got used to think that they are working, somehow they show that they are not working right now. And I think that right now actually is a great time for the Montessori for the Montessori educators from all around the world to step uh, forward and to show the beauty and like the all the beauty of the Montessori method to as many parents as possible, because it feels like this is we reached the point when if we are not doing this, then who will do this? Like, what will happen to the civilization? Because when we see what is happening, not only in Ukraine but in the whole world right now, it's frustrating. Like, people are stuck in the old beliefs, and we see that the mass consciousness is becoming much higher right now. Like, this is like at least it feels like that kind of shift. So I just wanted to thank Biff and to share that at least I feel the same way, and that's what we are trying to do. Due to the war, we started to raise awareness of the people in Ukraine and all around the world about the method and the importance of this kind of education. And yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Also, one more thing, like in 2 days, we will have the International Peace Day, and our team created the movie specifically for that holiday, and it includes educators, Montessori educators from all over the world, and the great grandson of Maria Montessori, who are talking about the peace and the importance of it in the world. And the premiere will be launched on 21st of September on our website. So I will leave it, if you don't mind, I will leave it in the chat box, so anyone who is interested can join. And also, during the production of the movie, we were doing this for 2 months. We were connecting with AMS and AMI and many organizations all around the world. And from my perspective, it feels like they are becoming more united. And yes, the war is a very sad thing, but at least it gave us the opportunity to start to unite those big corporations, and to remember that it's all about the children. It's all about the development of the children and the future civilization. So we really hope it will help. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. That's, it's really disturbing actually when you go back and you read some of the more dramatic things that Maria Montessori wrote about the state of the world, and you realize, things have not, if anything, they've deteriorated.
Well, what I lived in the United States since '94 when I started training with you at CMTE. So 22 years I was there. And one of the things that I really love about the United States is this entrepreneurial spirit, the ability of American culture to kind of reinvent itself and just shed sometimes, not always, but things that don't work, and kind of refresh. And it sounds like what you're saying is that Montessori is being, the way the education that doesn't work is being let go of in the United States, and Montessori is gradually being, or different approaches are being embraced. Would you say Montessori is becoming a household word in the United States?
Yeah, I think so, much more so. I mean, there still is a huge lag between the pedagogues and all sorts of people who write about Montessori education. I mean, there's a group of people that were writing about Montessori who are entrepreneurs themselves, and they started calling themselves the Montessori Mafia.
Yeah.
And they were writing in places like Harvard Business Review and you know, I mean, getting the kind of platform that we just couldn't imagine that we would get. But
and then you had Jeff Bezos giving $2 billion to
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. You know, so that stuff, obviously, who knows what the impact of that $2 billion is going to be, but but it certainly has has gotten publicity, and people have heard Montessori connected with something that's, you know, that's a phenomenon, for better or for worse, the Amazon phenomenon. And I think we're starting to see the word Montessori, the name Montessori, associated with something more than an historic educator. And, you know, it takes, but I started by saying that there's a lag time, because, you know, I'm not sure how much it's really impacted the educational, you know, the larger infrastructure of education. There's often a big difference between the innovators and the actual practitioners. So
what do you think are some of the biggest challenges faced by Montessori in general? In what's holding us back from being even more well known, even more becoming that reform from within movement that Maria really envisioned for education?
Well, we have to be very careful not to be self-righteous, because I think that alienates other educators. And, you know, when you talk like, you know, instead of talking like you're curious and talking like you're a seeker, I think it puts people off. And Montessorians have had this tendency to be holier than thou compared to other educators, and I don't think that's done us any service. I mean, a lot of Montessorians have been perfectly happy with being on the periphery, because I think our attitude has kind of been that, well, you know, we know how to really do this education thing, and there aren't very many people who will really get the message, but we're not gonna, you know, these are pearls and you're swine.
Mhm.
So I think we got to stop doing that. I don't think we have to chase after what other people are doing a whole lot, but I think we have to be, as I said, seekers instead of knowers. And I think we have to stick to our message. One of the things that sort of scares me is the willingness of a lot of Montessorians to try to accommodate cultures that are fundamentally different from our own. And we have to insist that there are certain characteristics of a Montessori school that that produce the outcomes. And if you compromise those things, you won't get those outcomes. And I'm not talking about the use of specific materials as much as I'm talking about the profound respect that we have to show each other and children in the schools, and the you know, the ability for children to make authentic choices and be empowered and being autonomous. If we surrender those things in order to try to boost, you know, to train children for standardized tests and things like that, then who cares whether the movement grows? It's not going to produce the outcome that we really are after, which is the new species.
Mm.
So I'm, you know, the answer to the challenges, I would say that's one, is to be very clear about what our core is and to stick to that core. Really know philosophically and pedagogically what we believe in. And then the other one is to get out there into the educational community and be willing to be seekers with them for better ways to be with children.
Mm. Have you figured out the work-life balance Montessorian?
No, I've never been very good at that. You know, I don't even have a good answer to what do you do? What are your hobbies? You know, people ask the question, and my hobby has for many years, my hobby was making materials, and now I do a lot of walking, so that's good. I love to travel. My wife keeps me somewhat honest by demanding that I do things both around the house and also that we get away. Grandchildren have made a big difference. I have 2 little grandchildren, and so being in love with them and makes me, takes me away from my obsession with Montessori education. But no, I'm so impressed with people that are better at this better at that than I am.
Is Ida, your daughter, still in Europe?
Yeah, she lives in Paris. She's a writer, and her husband is also a writer. And they have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old now, who are astoundingly wonderful children, and that I don't see nearly frequently enough.
Yeah. And your son, Teddy?
Teddy's in law school now in Boston, so that's a lot of fun. We get to see him periodically when he comes to drop in and get dinner. But he's very happy. Huh?
Did they talk to Ida and Teddy talk about the difference that Montessori made in their lives?
Oh yeah, Ida always says, and Ida went to some of the all-time, she went to some of the best independent schools after Montessori that she could go to, and really good college and stuff. And then she still says that Biff was her all-time best teacher, which is the right answer for her. And but yeah, and in fact, this week we have a kid moving here from Lyon and applying to come to Lexington Montessori School, and he doesn't speak any English. So on Wednesday, I'm gonna interview the family, and Ida's gonna translate.
Wow.
That'll be really fun. It's the first time she's ever done anything like that. So it'll be fun to get her back connected that way. And Teddy, it always looks back at his Montessori experience fondly. Yeah, I mean, I think they both, they're really different. Teddy was not one of those kids who was remarkably industrious. He was a sort of typical guy, and much more interested in getting outside and playing soccer or building forts in the woods than he was in a lot of the work. But he found his academic curiosity a little bit later. Ida, on the other hand, was sort of God's gift to a Montessori teacher all the way along. She took everything as far as she could take it. And so, it's really nice to look at the long term with these kids and see the amazing people they become. Mm-hmm. And I've really paid attention to that with the graduates from our school. I've tried to keep in touch with as many as I could, and it is really amazing how many people are doing really great things. So there's something about being a contributing, make a difference world citizen that really catches on with Montessori kids.
And that fondness of those students who look back on their school lives and want to come back to the school, they want to keep in touch. And the numbers of students that I've had who've looked me up on Facebook and just want to have, I can't imagine that for children of conventional education wanting to have contact with their teachers, So
I mean, your elementary school teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes people do that with their college professors or even some high school teachers, but it's rare that it's your elementary school teachers that you're looking for. I agree.
Well, Biff, it's been wonderful chatting with you again, and
that's really good.
Probably let you go, but thank you. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask before we sign off? Well, thanks for your time, Biff. Really appreciate it. You getting up at 3:30 in the morning.
Well, I
Yeah.
want to say, Biff, that I do still remember fondly our trips to Puerto Rico and Washington D.C. with those big groups of kids, and working in the classroom with you those years, and those times, never forget them.
Yeah.
The largest
No.
size of your 9 to 12 classroom was like 60 students, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty big again. We went through some periods where things contracted a bit, but the school's gotten pretty big again. So yeah, no, I have very fond memories of that too, Olga. With fond memories of both of you being at LMS. So
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
thank you all for being here. It's nice to meet Montessori Australia.